all profit is value extraction. And that means that all profit is theft from you.
Corporate America is on welfare, and we've got to get them off welfare.
The last words on my lips, I am a revolutionary, and you're going to have to keep on saying that.
Hi, welcome to Cars and Comrades, your socialist streetcar podcast. My name is Bryant. We've got Brandon, Connor, and Zach here today. How are you all doing today?
Doing well.
Doing good.
So we got a few different things to talk about this time around. Sort of the main topic is going to be the early history of streetcars. So I was going to do an episode on the GM streetcar conspiracy, but the more I looked into it, like the history of streetcars is really fascinating by itself. So I got.
By the way, I feel like now you should mention that by streetcar you do not mean modified cars that are run on the street like mine. You mean trolleys, essentially. Trolleys,
yeah, trams, light rail, whatever you want to call it. Little small trains that run on the street. Yeah. So
also for anyone coming to us looking for updates on the news, we have collectively decided off air we will not be contributing to the hot take industrial complex this week. And if you have an opinion about Russia or Ukraine, like good for you, because we're not fucking helping you.
Yeah, like if you find some news stories that relate to cars and or communism happening in Ukraine and or Russia, like send those to us. But like as near as I can tell, none of those things are happening over there. So
yeah, after Zach came out hard in favor of Ukrainian fascists, we decided
maybe someday we'll have a Patreon where you can hear our hot takes, but that doesn't exist yet. So
there are no fucking hot takes. War bad, killing people bad,
war bad.
Until it's class war.
Oh yeah, no.
Class war good, state war bad.
Yeah, I mean, class war is happening whether we want it or not.
Yeah, I was going to say, I don't know. I'd rather there wasn't class war. I'd rather we lived in a communist world, but we don't. So,
yeah, it's just whose side are you on? So, probably get up to about like 1900, 1914, somewhere in that range, and then next time around we'll go into more depth on the GM streetcar conspiracy and why Alfred P. Sloan was a bag of shit. And like if you're listening to NPR and it says this story brought to you by the Alfred P. Sloan Foundation, that's just a robber baron trying to launder his reputation by setting up some dumb charity to preach liberalism or whatever.
Yeah, that's what all philanthropy is.
For anyone not well versed in history, robber baron is the historical term for tech billionaire.
Yeah.
Yeah, except back then, the tech was like the electric starter motor on cars. That was a big deal back in the day. That was Kettering.
And by what I said.
So after our last historical series, the bicycle was fucking tech once upon a time.
Oh yeah, I mean that'll make
for Christ's sake.
That'll make a brief appearance in this one, or maybe the next one. I'm not sure what our schedule looks like, but yeah, we'll see. But yeah, I guess we should start on our project car updates because it's been a while since we all talked together. And also, what's that?
I said, Jesus Christ, I've had a week.
Yeah, I've had an interesting time myself, but what I always forget, this is a theme now. I forget what order we're supposed to go in.
Let's go alphabetical this time. I think we've been reversing it a lot. So,
all right. So Brandon, let's hear about your week.
So there's a special frustration that is even rare amongst car guys, and that's when you have 3 or 4 cars and they're all broken down at the same time.
It seems impossible. Every time it seems like that's not going to happen because I have so many, and then it happens every time. Sorry, I get it. I
mean, yeah, it's happened to me like several times.
How are they always broken? I don't... How? I spent so much money. I'm sorry, I feel this. When
your reasoning is like, okay, I drive shit boxes, so I'm going to have one that runs good, and then a backup in a pinch, and then a backup for that weird day when both of those are broken
How is
down.
it not enough? How is it not enough? I'm sorry. I'm having a moment here because I feel it.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
So the Cutlass has been on a spare tire for a minute because that's its own thing. And more or less, I've been working a lot up until my layoff last week, and I just didn't feel like dealing with it. I think I actually might buy new rims for it completely, so I don't want to buy new tires until I've decided that. But that's neither here nor there. It's not really safe to drive right now, and I haven't been driving it. My Chevy, like my 75 Chevy van that I always fucking drive and was like my daily driver without fail until I bought this Ford, got jealous, and one day it just wouldn't start. And it ended up being a really simple fix, but not before being a huge headache for not starting when I needed it, and the Ford wasn't running right.
Great.
Yes, because my Ford is having some weird issue. It's running really bad, and I think it is just that there is no, like, basically cold air intake. Like, those little like air cleaners usually have a snout that goes in front of the radiator, and mine doesn't.
Oh,
So once the engine gets up to temperature, if I get stuck in traffic or I let it sit for a little while or anything like that, it just runs really poorly. And I think it's just because it's sucking hot air. But I thought that I was getting some vapor lock, so I tried to like tweak my fuel line because it was really close to the block and the head. And I put a little dimple in it that just made it so that I was not getting any fuel to the carb. I didn't realize that immediately because when it was hot and up to temperature, it ran worse than normal when it was hot, but it did run. But once it cooled down, it wouldn't even start because it takes high RPMs for the fuel pressure to get past the bend that I had accidentally put in the fuel line. And it just it just like, oh God, it was all minor stuff mechanically. And then I was visiting a friend, and he was just like, oh, you got a little bit of crusty spots in your rocker. And I'm like, yeah, they were like that when I bought it. And the guy was upfront with me that he thought that it was just the Bondo separating from the work underneath. Yeah, so while looking closer at my rocker, which has gotten slightly worse since I bought it because of the salt on the road here, I realized so much bad stuff. Okay, so my assumption was that somebody didn't clean out rust adequately before bondoing over this and painting it. I was so generous in assuming that.
Oh, no.
So when I saw that, one of the first things I checked was that the inner rocker was intact. And it was, which makes what I'm about to say even more confusing. The rocker is full for the entire length of the rocker that I can tell with spray foam.
Oh.
What the fuck?
Nice.
Yeah.
The parts that appeared to be Bondo separating from rusty metal were in fact somebody carved the foam and bondoed over it directly.
No.
Oh, that would be good enough.
Well, okay, wait, hold on. Maybe I'm not understanding. So
No, you are.
inside the rocker, they filled it with spray foam? And why?
Okay, so that is a really bad technique that we use here because cars have to pass safety inspections, and intact rockers are required. Like
That's bullshit. Number one,
Yeah.
that's bullshit.
I think it's more of an issue when in like modern like monocoque frames where arguably the rocker and surrounding structure are structural to the car.
Fair. Okay.
Yeah.
It's a moot point in older vehicles because like even these vans are not technically full frame, but their construction is a full frame with the body spot welded to it. So that does technically count as unibody, but it effectively works like a full frame.
Okay.
Yeah.
But yes, so here, what people will do is if your car's in really bad shape, but you have a friendly mechanic who will let you pass inspection for one more year, they will fill something with spray foam and then put like something over that so that it seems like there's structural integrity, and then basically tell you that's the last time your car passes inspection.
Shit.
Now, this van is in generally good enough condition that I have no fucking clue why someone would do this. The rocker panels are one of the only body panels for this van you can still buy.
That's actually surprising.
Rockers are generally a thing that goes and therefore gets reproduced.
Well, no, what I'm surprised by is that that's one of the only parts you can still get for it.
Oh,
I mean,
I don't remember.
I'm not
I don't remember exact years, but this body style was only in production for 7 or 8 years.
Oh, okay, gotcha.
And it went out in let's see, 60. I believe it was 68 to 74 or 75. I think 74. I think mine's last year. So what is that? 8 years? Yeah, and a lot of them came off the road because they kind of didn't sort a lot of the bugs out, and they just started rotting really badly. Like that's why I actually paid for this vehicle, because it's hard to find them in decent condition.
That whole era of cars rotted out.
Okay, in these specifically, they had problems with the frame rotting out where the gearbox for the steering was located, which scrapped them real fast.
Gotcha.
Because like once that frame part is gone, it's either like, heavy repair work, or like there's no ignoring it. Like if your frame has a bad spot in the back and you're just like, well, don't hit any potholes too big. That's like, oh, the frame is rotted and now the steering is no longer connected to the vehicle.
Maybe I'm a conspiracy theorist on this, but I feel like the 70s was like the heyday of engineered obsolescence. I thought that was just like where they deliberately made cars that would rust out eventually, so you'd have to buy a new one. Because like all the 70s cars, they didn't drill holes in rockers. They made sure that shit leaked in a certain way, that it would pool in certain spots in the car, and every frame rotted from the 70s. I thought that was kind of just the thing. I don't know. Maybe I'm wrong, but
either way, I now at some point, whenever it gets nice out, have to cut my rocker out and get all that foam out, because that foam absorbs water and will just destroy everything from the inside out.
Yup.
Right.
My saving grace is that there's no signs of rot on the inner rocker from underneath the van, so it has rusted the inside of the inner rocker. It has at least been minor enough to not rot it.
Well, that's good. A little rust remover and a new outer rocker, and you'll be in business. It's probably for the best, really.
Yeah, I was so upset when I went to go pry a piece of what looked like rusty metal off with a screwdriver, and my screwdriver just sank all the way in until it hit inner rocker.
Oh, no.
Oh man, I'm sorry.
Oh, and as I discussed off air, this was on the same day that I had already spent 6 hours trying to verify my identity with the unemployment office, because there is now a third party identification like verifications thing going on there that didn't need to exist. So in addition to not being able to speak to a real person, you have a computer program that just doesn't accept reason.
Privatization,
oh my God,
baby, I love it.
Capitalist
by the way,
innovation is killing me.
Sorry, I forgot to say I've become an ANCAP now, so I'm still an anarchist, but I believe in the wonders of the free market.
All right, everybody, keep your children away from Connor.
I've been convinced by people by ANCAPs who comment on our stuff on Instagram.
Well, they have such solid and convincing arguments. It's really hard to go against them.
It's very hard.
Scream that violates the NAP over and over again.
Yeah, they just define everything in such a way that it works for them. So now that's what I believe now. Anyway, sorry, bad joke. Continue.
Oh, dude, there's not really a whole lot left to say. Over the course of a few days, it went from like everything was fine to nothing was running, and my favorite new toy is rotting from the inside out.
Woo!
The fuel line is fixed. It's still running rough until I put a snout on it. The van ended up just being a bad coil, which is extraordinarily easy to replace and inexpensive because it's a Chevy. It was $30 and took me a whopping 20 minutes to do that.
That's not bad.
No, but it was the diagnostics. Plus, I drained the battery trying to get it to start because it was like 15 degrees the day that it went. So I just thought that it was having a hard time starting in the cold, which was unusual because normally that van runs incredibly well. But, I hadn't driven it for a couple of weeks, and it was cold out, so anything was possible, including your coil shitting the bed. Yeah, it was just a fucking week, man. But in slightly more cheerful news, I have figured out what my full roadmap for what I'm doing with the new van after I patch up the rockers. I'm going to try and pick up a lead transmission I've got a lead on this week, and I have done actual math to figure out the transmission, rear end gear ratios, and tire height that will make this an optimal ride. And I think I might have an 18 to 19 mile per gallon van on my hands here.
Fuck yeah.
Sweet.
Hell yeah.
That's awesome.
Mathematically, if everything I do pans out, I should be getting, I think it was 19 and a half miles to a gallon. Now,
Good shit.
that does not factor in a few things that could increase or decrease the fuel economy. So I'm hoping all of those things just come out in the wash and I get 19 miles to a gallon out of this fucking thing. It just requires me putting in an overdrive transmission and keeping... I have a terrible rear end ratio for not having overdrive, but I have the perfect rear end ratio if I have overdrive. So I was thinking about rebuilding the rear end and just decided it's time to start planning for a transmission swap.
Good shit.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you were thinking about doing that for a while, though, right? You're going to put in a 5-speed.
I fucking love overdrive.
Yeah.
And with this being a very low performance motor, I like the world was my oyster. Like a lot of my other stuff doesn't have overdrive because overdrive transmissions have a tendency to grenade themselves under power.
Right.
Unless you spend the money for it, and I buy everything from junkyards. So, no. But this one makes like 150 horsepower on a good day. So I can put anything behind it and it will hold up fine.
Yeah.
So I'm gonna put a T5 behind it.
Yeah,
Nice.
hell yeah.
Yeah, if I find the right one, they have like a 0.64 overdrive, which is crazy tall. But I've been all of my research on how to make fuel economy with an engine is like coming to a head right now. That I'm like not actually trying to make 500 horsepower. I'm just trying to cruise. So I don't know. That's all good. I don't know how hard the actual swap's going to be, but I'm sure I will keep you guys updated.
Yeah.
But the priority is the rocker because it's full of foam and no metal.
Nice.
Yeah, that would be a priority, I imagine. Especially, I mean, if you got to deal with all the inspection bullshit. I mean, there's cars around here that, that would never pass any kind of inspection.
I genuinely cannot imagine having to pass like a full inspection. I struggle enough just to get past emissions happen. I'm like, I'm fucking, yeah. Look, I'm an atheist, but I'm like praying to God, just like, all right, look, God, I will fucking believe if I just pass. Please let me pass.
Please. All of my stuff's emissions exempt because if it's more than 25 years old, you are exempt from emissions inspections. Mm-hmm. So I just have to pass safety inspections, and I've come up with actually a pretty good little workaround for that. I just don't.
Yeah, that would help.
Yeah. People were like, how do you get away with that? And I'm like, I don't know.
Okay. Yeah, I cannot imagine having to pass it. Because, like, if I had to deal with other kinds of problems like that, I'm like, nah. I wouldn't be into cars anymore. I'd be like, nah. Nah, I'll take my Toyota Camry, and that's that.
I will say that after a lot of trying different things, bodywork is like my least favorite thing in the fucking world to do. So I'm really excited about this rocker. But the bright side is it's a fairly simple contour, so I'm not even going to try and order the part just yet. I'm going to grab some sheet metal and see if I can just fab it up myself.
Yeah, fuck it, why not?
If I had access to a good brake, like sheet metal brake, this whole rocker panel would take me like fucking an hour.
Yeah.
But I just have hammers, so it's going to take me like a day to do it wrong and decide to buy one.
Well, keep us posted on that too.
I fucking hate sheet metal. Is like the perfect intersection of art and science. Like there is so much science to it, but you really got to have a creative flair for making it turn out right.
Yeah,
I'm just gonna stop bitching about like all of my shit heaps piling up on each other and just be done. Those are the problems that I have had this past 2 weeks.
I guess on to the next round of shit heaps that are piling up.
I will say, all of this happened 2 days after I got laid off, so it didn't ever fuck with my work schedule.
That's fortunate.
Yeah, at least that's good. Is that all you got there, Brandon?
I mean, do you want me to go for another 2 hours about how pissed off I am at everything I own?
I don't know if we have time for that.
Yeah, let's just move on then.
Okay. So what have I been doing? I think last time we were recording, I got my MR2 almost done, and since then I've got it all the way done. So knock on wood, it's not going to explode or anything. I was driving it around and I heard like a bolt fall off of it.
No.
But I checked and nothing important was missing. So I think it's just like I took a bolt off and I set it down somewhere like on the strut tower and it fell off. So
So you finished with
I think everything's
you finished
okay.
with extra bolts. Good job.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, I had plenty of extra hardware. It was a little scary at first, but then I realized, there's all the hardware that was attached to the old transmission that I replaced.
I like that. I'm going to start using that when I have extra bolts at the end. I'm going to be like, oh yeah, it was all the extra bolts that I bought. Yeah, that.
Yeah. But yeah, I've been driving that around a lot. It's really fun. Like I was like, this is so much fun. It ought to be illegal. And like really, cars that small without airbags and, ABS and stuff, they are illegal now. So, I don't know. It's just a lot of fun. And at one point I had, there's like a resonator in the intake to make it quieter. And I had accidentally disconnected that when I put everything back together.
Nice.
And I was like, oh, it sounds a lot louder than it was before. I wonder if I broke the exhaust when I twisted it or something. And then I realized, it was the intake, but it was pretty fun there for a second. Like some guy with a pickup with straight pipes gave me a thumbs up. It sounded like a real rice rocket.
That actually reminded me, I left out a whole portion of problems I had with the Ford.
Yeah.
The one sentence summary, my exhaust just straight up broke.
Hey,
Nice.
That's a Ford problem.
You don't need it.
That's the Ford problem. My Ranger did the same thing. The whole back half of it just kind of snapped off. So
I run side pipes, so the driver's side's broke in half.
nice.
I fixed it, but goddamn, it's been a couple of weeks, guys.
Yeah. Well, so I guess the reason why this isn't mostly about the GM streetcar conspiracy is because instead of finishing the research last night, I was working on my Subaru. So now that the weather's a little bit nicer, I've got the MR2 out on the road and the Subaru in the garage. I'm going to fix those leaky fuel lines and a couple other things.
Oh, yeah, all right.
And last night, it took me around 3 hours to replace the spark plugs and do a compression test because it's a Subaru and the spark plugs are right next to the frame rails.
I was about to say, I'm like, yeah, that sounds like it's tough.
So it was a pain in the ass. Thanks to Zach for loaning me the compression tester. And I'm a little bit surprised because they're all at 120 PSI, which is not great. It should be like 150 for a brand new engine, but like for something with almost 200,000 miles on it, it's pretty decent.
It only matters that they're consistent.
Yeah, as long as
they're all the same, you're good.
Yeah, they're all like within 1 PSI of each other.
That's great.
So.
You're great.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I was also a little upset there for a second because you said you did a compression test. And I was like, what the fuck, dude? I told you like 10 times you could borrow my compression tester. Apparently you did, though. So, yeah, you're welcome. No worries. I guess you get it back to me. Whatever. I don't need it that
bad. Yeah. And what was I going to say? Oh, I hope the bottom end holds together, though, because I might have run it low on oil the other day. Yeah, it burns a little bit of oil, and it was making a little bit of a noise. And then I'm like, I wonder what that is. Whatever, I'll just drive for 100 miles and not worry about it. And then when I was getting gas, I'm like, I should check the oil. And it was at the very bottom of the dipstick. So, yeah.
Okay.
You're fine. I've done way worse. You're fine.
It's Subaru though.
Yeah.
Look, I'm going to be honest with you. I've done that, and then I had problems after a little while.
Yeah.
So
I mean, it sounded a little bit like lifter tick. So I don't know if these have hydraulic lifters, but maybe just one of them was a little low. And it was only happening like at certain RPMs and only when I accelerated. So I don't know.
probably not the worst thing. Doesn't sound too bad.
But I mean, I put oil in it and it's fine now. So
Yeah, it'd be all right.
Let's go with that.
That's the great thing about old V8s is they never burn a little bit of oil.
It's always a lot.
Put a lot of oil.
Well, sometimes they burn a lot of oil and sometimes they leak a lot of oil, but you always know that you have to check it constantly.
You'll never forget. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like the old joke, how do you know your Harley's out of oil? It's not leaking anymore.
Yeah. Yeah, mine, I think it's one of the valve stem guides on the exhaust, because last time I took the exhaust off to change the up pipe, one of the exhaust ports was a lot blacker than the other ones. So, I mean, as far as like oil leaks, that's not the worst thing in the world. It's just going to smoke out the exhaust sometimes, but yeah, just got to remember to put oil in it. But that's all I've got as far as my stuff. So is it Connor's turn now?
Yeah, I guess that would be me.
This feels like the big one. I had a frustrating week, but you've got the serious ongoing project.
Yeah, I can't remember what I said on the last episode, but look, nothing has changed. I'm in the same boat. Forever spending money. I've spent a fuckload of money to have a car that runs like a piece of shit. It's not great. So I went to the tuner for the 5th time, I think. They got rid of that, that fix that I had that like took away the misfire, right? So like that extra hose that I was talking about is a goofy ass thing, but like that got rid of the misfire. It just made the drivability really shitty. And so I took it to the tuner, and he tried to tune with that, didn't work. So then he undid that because he didn't like it. So now it's got the misfire again, but the drivability is better. And it's like, son of a bitch. And they were talking, they're like, oh, I don't know, we could try a new ECU, which I feel like I was talking about this last time we recorded, and I don't know now, but like a new ECU is fine, right? I can pick up a newer ECU because he was saying the 03s were like some of the first ECUs they used that were a newer style. And they have issues. And so maybe getting an 04 would help. So I can get an 04 ECU used for a couple $100. The problem is I have to then pay for the tuning license. All the tuning features that I had on this current one, plus the time to tune it. And it's basically like I'm starting the tuning from fucking scratch. So get a new computer is going to cost me somewhere in the range of another $1,000. And there's no guarantee that that's the issue. And like that, it bothers me because it's like, okay, well, I mean, what is happening? When it does the fucking thing that I don't want it to do, what is the data telling you? What are all these fucking sensors? What are they saying? You know what I mean? And it's like, maybe that.
So
go ahead.
Can you, if that is the issue, can you like, when you do figure it out, can you, sell off one of the ECUs and the tuning license with it to make up for that?
I mean, theoretically, I can sell my ECU for a couple $100 or something, and maybe I can do it with a tune and say, "Oh, look, it's got a tune on it." But like, I also don't know if that's good. Maybe I shouldn't. I'd have to ask them and be like, I don't know, is that something I sell with a tune? Because maybe that would cause issues. Like, especially if it's like, I don't know what kind of map they'd put on it, but whatever. Point is, maybe I get a couple $100 out of it, and I guess that's something, but like...
Oh, since you're an ANCAP now, you should be very careful about the maps that you're putting on things.
The maps?
That's their politically...
I don't want to... I don't want to have to explain that. Please do that, Brandon, for me.
ANCAPs are libertarians or whoever the fuck. I think it was specifically ANCAPs were like getting upset about the term pedophile, so they came up with minor attracted person.
Okay. Oof. Oh wow. All right.
Yeah.
Wow. That joke really came back, huh? Yeah. No, not that. Not that. But anyway, so that's kind of like nobody knows what the fuck's wrong with the car, and you know, me, an idiot, is having to like figure out everything, and I don't trust any shops anymore, except the one that like did the assembling of my motor, which like I trust him, but he's not a tuner. He can't fucking. He's like done what he can. He's like, I don't know what's wrong at this point. Everything seems solid, so I'm dealing with all these other shops, and it's just like, people, look at the fucking data. Like, there's something going on. I don't know. So I've got to make a bunch of phone calls myself, and I'm going to try and call the cam manufacturer and the parts distributor that specializes in Z stuff. I'm going to try and call them and see if they've seen anything like this shit before. Because, like, it's got all these symptoms, but, like, no one can pin down what they're from. Like, I've got the tuner being like, oh, maybe it's could be a bad ECU, and there's no way to know until we do it. So, it'll cost you $1,000 to try this thing that may or may not be an issue, which is just what I love to hear. And then he also mentioned,
the fuck not.
well, look, be honest with you, that might be what I have to do. But I'm going to make some fucking calls first. And I might I'd like to try and find another tuner in the area that I can go get like a second opinion and be like, look, I'll pay you, a couple $100, but like, look at it, try and figure out if what you're seeing from the data. Like, I got to go either pursue that route, and I'll pay the extra couple $100 to know that, like, yeah, hey, it seems like what they're telling you is probably the way to go. Fine. I'm feeling more comfortable then. But like, I'm just like at a loss that it's like, I've spent all this money and it's like, all right, look, y'all are the fucking professionals. Like, why do I have to know all this shit? Like, I don't know, make it work. So I got to call, all of these and the tuner's telling me like, oh, I've seen people have problems with the lightweight flywheels and stuff. And I'm like, okay, that could be, but can you explain to me the flywheel hasn't changed when we did this, like this fix where you run the hose from the intake to the crankcase? That didn't change the flywheel. So why did it change how the car was running? You know what I mean? It's like, if that's what's causing the issue, then all these other things shouldn't matter, but they do. So like, and it makes me doubt their ability when it's like, hey, here's this thing that you're telling me is a possibility, however remote that may be, but I can be like, well, that's not likely for reasons X, Y, Z. So that sucks. I don't know. I've got to call a few places. I might try and post up in a forum or something, but I'm just not expecting to get good responses, because part of my problem is that, and maybe listeners can learn from this, with this rebuild, I fucking did everything. All these parts are fucking brand new. And the problem with doing that, which, like, there's no way I couldn't not do, like, I couldn't rebuild the engine and not put the cams in, because then it's a whole job to put the fucking cams in later. I could do the whole job, but like, oh, but I'll get the heads ported later. Well, again, I'm not taking this shit all apart again in a few months. So I did it all at once, but now that there's an issue, I don't know what the issue is. You're like, great. I was really hoping that when I took this up, I'm like, hey, if I control every part that went into this car, I know everything about it, and someone should be able to figure it out. But apparently, someone cannot figure it out. So it's up to me, a non-professional. So yeah, that's where that's at. I'm not happy about it. Plus, I was driving it the last few days, and I thought maybe it was in my head, but it's definitely not. The car is darting around all over the road now. After, if you'll remember, I recently had a bunch of shit fixed, from tie rods, inner, outer, steering rack, and a front knuckle, all replaced. And the car was driving fine, and then the last few days it was bad. Like, dangerous to drive, darting all over the road. So at first I thought it was in my head. It's definitely not, but I noticed one of my tires was super low yesterday, and I filled that tire, and I have not driven it since. So maybe it was just that my one tire was really low, except it was a back tire, and so probably wasn't affecting it that much. But
This reminds me of the joke, how do you make a small fortune racing?
start
You start out with a big fortune.
Yeah, so that's where I'm at. Spending lots of money to have a shit box. It's super cool. It's super disappointing, especially like drifting season is coming up soon, and my shit, I can drift it. I think I will drift it with a fucking misfire at this point. So it's gonna drift, but like I'm gonna feel bad if it's drifting and the car is running like shit. Like I won't feel as good doing it, and that's what it's about to me. I want to feel good when I do it, instead of like, my car's a piece of shit, but like I'm gonna go throw it at a wall. It's not as fun when it doesn't run right.
I love how 9 times out of 10 our podcast is about how much our hobby sucks.
Yeah, yeah, it is. So anyway, after spending lots of money, I feel very disappointed. So don't be like me, I guess.
There's two kinds of car guys in this world: rich and mentally ill.
Yeah. I started this build rich. Not anymore. Definitely not. I saved for a couple years for this shit. So very disappointing that it's running like this. But I don't know. Maybe I'll figure it out soon. We'll see. Maybe New CU will do it. I don't know. Anyway, that's all I got.
And real quick, by the way, I just looked it up. Subaru stopped using hydraulic lifters in 1997. So it was definitely either piston slap or some bearing making noise in my engine.
Maybe it was something else. I mean, it could be all kinds of things. All sorts.
Could have been the turbo. I mean, that's
not
cheap enough and easy enough to replace.
Yeah, I suppose.
So, I haven't checked the turbine for like run out or anything. So we'll see.
A lot of shit can make noise. So
yeah.
Let's hope
That's all
for
I do.
the best. All right. Well, Zach, what do you got?
Oh man, I've been pretty lazy recently, so I haven't been doing a lot of work. But that doesn't mean that my cars don't get new problems. Yeah, my Subaru's like randomly just not starting in the morning.
That's when you needed to start the most.
Yeah, to go to work and stuff.
No, disagree. You needed to start the most to get home from work.
Yeah. If I had no way to work, I'd just be like, fuck it, I'm not going to work today. Cool. If I can't get home from work, that's a lot worse for sure.
Oh, that actually reminds me that I had another problem with the Ford. I told you it's been a lot. I almost couldn't get home from work one night because my starter went.
Jesus.
Oh,
yeah,
fun.
Yeah, everything broke in the last. We didn't have like fucking. We haven't spoken in 2 weeks and everything went to shit.
That's all it takes, really. 2 weeks and it could really go south.
All of these problems I've listed, and I think it was about $100 to fix all of them.
Wow,
That's not too bad.
And a few hours of your labor, I'm sure.
About $120, yeah.
Nice.
The starter on the Ford was a 20-minute job.
Oh, that's so nice. I miss old cars. I should have never switched to this new shit. It's pissing me off.
Well, it's sort of like how do you want to invest your time? Do you want to work on it for 5 hours now and then not again for a year? Or do you want to work on it for 30 minutes this week, 30 minutes next week, 30 minutes the week after that? It all comes out in the wash.
Yeah, that's true. I don't think mine is the starter, although it could be. It could be fucking anything, honestly. I don't know. I've put zero effort into trying to figure it out. It's just like randomly, some mornings it just won't start. But I have an access port on it, which like can read a bunch of sensors, and so I can read battery voltage, and the voltage looks fine every time I check it. It just like acts like I don't have my foot on the clutch, so it won't even like try to turn over or do anything.
Oh.
But then like if I wait long enough, 9 times out of 10, literally I think it's been about 10 times, it'll just start to crank over. But one time it just wouldn't, and then I had my girlfriend come out and like put jumper cables from her car to mine, and it would have worked. But the voltage never changed on the battery. But for some reason that fixed it. So I haven't the foggiest fucking idea what is going on. It seems to be way worse when I'm at her house too. Like it only happened once when I was at my house, but it's happened probably like 8 or 9 times.
Yo, your girlfriend really likes you and is sabotaging your car so you don't leave.
I guess so. She keeps telling me that I have to be her sugar daddy, jokingly. But she's like, yeah, dude, you got to start making all kind of money and be the sugar daddy. And I'm like, you and I both know that's not going to happen. Like, you know what I do for a living. So if that's her goals, she's not doing a very good job of letting me be a sugar daddy. I'm like, I got bills to pay, homie. Like, I got to get out of here.
Well, actually, that this isn't really like an update for anything, sort of. But in good news, I think I talked to Connor about this. I realized that if my home repairs go smoothly this year and I'm able to work consistently, I'm on track to being able to afford my drag motor for the 2023 season.
Oh, hell yeah. That's fucking awesome, dude.
Like the full 1,000 horsepower build.
Sick as fuck.
That'll be super cool.
I'll be poor as shit when I do succeed at doing it, but like, I might be able to do it.
Worth it. Definitely worth it.
Worth it to get that sweet 3 miles to a gallon.
Hell yeah. Yeah, I think that's all I had, though. My car's being weird, and I'm lazy, and I haven't looked into it yet.
Nice.
I mean, if you got a backup, just fucking be lazy some days.
Yeah, I don't really right now, though.
What's up with the Ranger?
Oh, the Ranger. I think I talked about this. It's been a long time because it's been sitting.
You told me about it, at least.
Yeah. I can't remember if I talked about it on the pod now. The Ranger is making a lovely ticking noise coming from the torque converter, like anytime I'm on the gas at all.
Uh-huh.
So I know that the torque converter is going to just blow eventually.
I thought it was a new torque converter that you put on wrong first and then put on correctly. So how could there be another issue? How could there be more?
Correct. There's always more, Connor. There's always fucking more. It never ends.
I'm starting to think maybe I'm going to stop being a car enthusiast and I'm just going to be the non-car enthusiast on this podcast. I'll stay on the podcast, but I'm going to be like, no, I don't fuck with cars no more. I don't know anything. How many cylinders do you have? I don't get it.
I
don't know. If you're doing that and being an ANCAP, I don't know if we can allow you to be on here.
We're all right with you being an ANCAP. It's the not being a car person.
I mean,
that's where we draw the line.
The free market.
Again, there's only one map sensor that we're going to allow on here.
Well, the free market will figure it out. It's just that the state gets in the way, and that's why markets don't work consistently forever, and why they've always failed. The state.
I know you're joking, but I'm still just fighting back rage.
Yeah, I yell at you a little bit. Like, I know I can hear the sarcasm, and I still want to yell.
I often play the mental game with myself. What would my life be like if I just bought a goddamn Corolla and gave up on this dumb bullshit? I don't have my life would be so much easier, but I don't know if it would be better.
Yeah,
I mean
that. The new GR Corolla looks pretty cool.
But we don't fucking get it.
No. We did get the Corolla, not the Yaris.
Wait, we do?
Yeah.
Oh, fuck all this shit. I'm selling all my shit. I'm buying a new Corolla.
Yeah, dude.
I'm going to mod it, though, so I'll be right back to where I started.
The hot hatch game is looking pretty good. I'm starting to be like, you know what? Maybe I can try and find, like, a Golf R someday. But the problem is those used car prices are so high, I just can't. It's going to be 10 years before I can get one. I'm like, fuck. And then it won't be fast anymore. It'll be slow. Oh, that's the problem. I can't afford a fast car until it becomes slow by that day's standards. And that's how the pricing works. And that's the real reason I hate capitalism. Right there. That's what made me a communist, is the fact that all the fast cars have to be slow before I can afford them. Anyway, sorry.
No, I saw someone on the Hexfair cars community talking about, like, years ago when I was in high school, I really wanted a RX-7, and they were like $20,000, and I couldn't afford it. Now they're $30,000 and I can't afford it. You know, by the time I can afford that $30,000 car, there'll be 50,000.
Yeah.
So
Yeah, those RX-7s they're going up.
I was about to say, where can you find an RX-7 for 30 grand? Point me in that direction, because, like, damn, that's a steal right now.
The flip side to my mental game where I wonder what my life would be like if I weren't a car guy, I also think to myself sometimes, like, well, maybe I should just sell 11 of the cars and put all of that money into the remaining one so that I have something, like, reliable. And I also know that that's never going to happen.
The dream of a reliable car is something that does keep me going for... I mean, I'll never have one, but, like, the thought that, oh, this will be the year. I'm going to get a daily.
Yeah.
Well, that's what my Subaru was going to be, and then I started modifying it. So
Yep.
Exactly. Yes, that's what he's getting at, though, is that you never have a true daily. It's just somehow you talk yourself into buying something else that you can daily, and before you know it, your daily's making 300 or 400 horsepower, and you don't have any money and more problems.
Let me put it this way.
Do we hate cars? We're in abusive relationships with vehicles.
We really are. I had a good girl, and I let her go. I bought a cheap ass low mileage Saturn from a family friend, like years ago, and close to 10 years ago now. And that thing was great. Great gas mileage. Nothing was ever wrong with it. It was cheap. It was easy. I sold that shit and bought an Audi S4 because I'm a dumbass and an addict. And I cannot be helped.
Oof. But see, the S4 is fast. When
It's so fast. When it works, it's so fast.
It's so funny because I've heard the horror stories of your S4, and like I still look around and I'm like, man, I could get me an S4. Them things are fast as shit. I love it.
They're so tight, dude.
I wish
should get
I
one.
could-
I mean, I need someone to suffer with.
I wish I could afford like a newer S5, the ones that had like the V8 that like could rev to
Yes.
8,500 RPM. Oh my god, I
Yes.
want the fuck out of that. But again, used
Dude,
car
they're
prices
gorgeous.
are crazy. But
Yeah,
yeah, it would be
100%.
riddled with problems that I could never hope to fix. And I want it still. I want to spend lots of money on it. It's so bad.
Yeah. Listen, if you want any Audi S series, you need to have double the money that it costs.
Yes.
Because it's going to cost you that in repairs at least in the first year to maybe 2.
Yeah, I feel like the thing about cars that like gets me is I'm like, it's that sense of freedom, which is why the personal car exists in America, because we're so fucking alienated from our lives and from our labor. I realized I was like, oh, that's why we have this hobby that hurts us so much. And that's why I just want a car that's fast and cool, because I want to go and drive when I feel pissed off from work because I'm alienated.
Yep.
I actually I envy y'all's ability to just want a thing that exists, because I'm just like, everything that I want is a thing that I'm going to have to build.
Oh, our shit like requires serious modification. We can't avoid that. We can delude ourselves into thinking we won't, but
Well, then I'm glad that I at least like stuff that's old enough that the fabrication work is easy.
yeah.
That wasn't car talk. That was group therapy.
yeah.
Yeah.
And it's got like bike hooks and stuff. And one of the thoughts I had as soon as I saw the bike hooks, I was like, oh fuck, I could have a bike again. It's been years, but I could get a bike. Especially because
Now, is this going to be like in the suburbs where there's like no place to actually ride a bike and you're going to die if you do? Or
well, look, so I actually think the suburbs is much easier to ride a bike than the fucking city, because I drive in the city for work pretty much a couple times a week, and it's fucking scary. Like that thing that you posted in the Slack where it's just like, oh, this is a shared lane for bikes, and I was like, yeah, that's just a street with a that's
That was the joke.
Yeah, dude, they have bike lanes in the city of Chicago, but like the problem is you have to cross the bike lanes to turn anywhere. So like if there's someone there, they're gonna get fucking hit. It's dangerous.
There's the one of the more recent episodes of Well, There's Your Problem. They had a really good discussion about, bicycle infrastructure and all the the way it sucks in the US and Canada.
Yeah.
And then they had that guy from Not Just Bikes, talking about how it is in the Netherlands and how it's so much better. So
Yeah. So
Dude,
this is the part of the podcast where we recommend other podcasts.
like, I don't know if we're like putting any of this in the show or not. I don't really care. But just as a side note, like I've always held the position. Like anytime my friends were like, "This sucks. I'm moving to Canada or I'm moving to Europe or whatever," like that, like trite bullshit is. I've always been really steadfast. As like, yeah, America sucks, and so it's my job to stay here and try and make it better.
Right.
And the last year has been the first time I've seriously considered, like, maybe it's time to leave.
yeah, yeah, I've had that thought too, where it's like I'd like to make it better, and I'm like, ooh, I don't know if this is the Imperial Core. It might not be possible until.
Yeah, I'm like staring down the barrel of these people who are just like reveling in their own misery, and I do that, but at least in a self-aware enough way that I'm not inflicting it upon others. So,
I'm not proud of it, at least.
I have genuinely considered moving to Canada, not because I think Canada is like some wonderful No, it's not. It's none of that. But it has very pretty mountains, and I like pretty mountains. That's what it comes down to. Is I'm like, oh, I could live there because it's pretty, and they also have they do have some cars that we do not have here, and they're all the ones that I want.
Yep.
See, I'm just like looking at like European labor shit and realizing that some of these motherfuckers are getting like 5, 6, 7 weeks off a year, and I'm like, you know what? I might just trade in everything for that.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah. I mean, if I spoke any European languages, maybe I would.
English is European as fuck.
I was going to say, yeah, and I do speak a little Spanish, and that is European, although they talk funny over there.
They talk real funny.
They got that vosotros conjugation.
I've only learned Spanish from, Latin American folks, so.
Well, that's because they speak Spanish, not, in Spain they speak you just drop the S, and you're like, well, the S is super fucking important to everything. They just drop it there, and you're like, oh, from context. I'm like, so they just don't say the fucking words, is what you... It's crazy. The people in Latin America speak it correctly. And anyway, enough.
Spain said no grammar, just vibes.
I like it. All right, so I guess we should get on topic. I don't know if I'm going to hit my time target, but we'll try and get through this.
As long as we're close.
You don't need to see the openers.
Well, those are the bands that my friends are in.
Oh fuck! Never mind. Sorry, that's a dick.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Maybe I'll at least go and say hi to them. It's only like $15 to get in. What was I going to say? Okay, so I guess like I said, I was going to just do an episode on the GM streetcar conspiracy, and I will. But as I learn more about this, like just the whole history of trams and trolleys and streetcars, whatever you want to call it, is really fascinating. And it's really a microcosm of capitalism. It's like, this is a good thing, objectively, public transit. Like it gets people to where they need to go efficiently. And, and if you do it correctly, it's, ecologically green and everything. But capitalism went and fucked it all up. And this is kind of the story of that. So, and towards the end, I'll get into some of the labor history too, because, during the height of streetcars, there were a lot of strikes. It was kind of corresponded with the heights of labor militancy in the U.S. So it kind of starts with the Industrial Revolution. Like really, streetcars were an outgrowth of railroads. And railroads were a big part of the Industrial Revolution, and really, getting people to work in a city was a big part of the Industrial Revolution. So, it wasn't really possible until you had railroads when, it became possible to manufacture long steel rails or iron rails or what have you. But at least in the beginning, steam engines weren't good enough to be, miniaturized and put on commuter rail systems. So you had horse-drawn tramways, So this came out.
So like it's a carriage,
Yeah.
but for a lot of people.
Basically,
That's
yeah.
kinda
So
cool.
like,
I like that.
you had stagecoaches and what they called omnibuses in France, which was basically just a wagon or, a stagecoach
Wait, I thought
that was moving people in a city.
omnibus was like a fucking big old budget bill that we had to stick everything into. Is that not what it is?
Yeah, I'm not sure where that meaning comes from because it's Latin for everyone.
Oh, okay. Now I get it. I kind of get it.
Yeah.
Okay, omnibus bill. Everyone puts their bullshit into it, and then
I guess.
cool. Sorry.
Yeah. No, it's cool. And if you want, like, there's a whole history of the omnibus that I left out of this because it's dumb. But if you're a real like language nerd, you can look.
Yeah,
up
the thing that Connor brought up is dumb. Got it.
I'm sorry, Connor. I didn't mean to say that.
This isn't etymology in Comrades, all right? Get that shit out of here.
Thank you, Zach. That's what I meant.
That's great.
But yeah, so first off, you had tramways that were used for industrial things, think like mine carts pulled by donkeys and stuff. And then eventually they got bigger and they started moving, people on them in and out of the mines. And then at some point they were they were coasting downhill with the horses on board, which I think is just a funny image. That was in Wales,
Whoa,
I believe.
So hold on, I'm very confused now.
They were leading the horse to water.
Wait, the carriage was pulling the horse now? What?
Well, it was on a hill, and so the horses would pull the tram or the train up the hill, and then they're like, "Well, we don't need to let them. They don't need to walk down. They can just ride down. So we'll put them in this wagon, the special wagon for the horses, and they can just kind of coast downhill and save them the effort."
Wait, and
I feel like the horses would probably have been way more comfortable walking.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean, this was a few miles downhill, I imagine. This is in Wales. And so this led to the first passenger tram services, the Swansea and Mumbles Railway in Wales in 1807, which I think Mumbles is just a perfect British place name. But so, and the advantage of having a
should we address the fact that you just referred to Wales as Britain?
I mean, it is in Britain. It's in Great Britain, right? I don't know.
It's in Great Britain, but I'm pretty sure they're aren't they like more or less on the same page as the Irish, where they just feel like the English can go fuck themselves?
Well, I mean, they're part of the United Kingdom. I don't know if that counts as Great Britain. There's like a whole weird Venn diagram that someone, I'm sure, has graphed out, but
just take this whole section out because we are so fucking ignorant on the history right there, and it is not like a quick one to unpack.
Yeah, so
we're gonna have
Welsh
so
people
many Welsh people in our DMs, dude.
I'm pretty sure everyone. Hold on, I'm pretty sure everyone thinks the British can go fuck themselves.
Oh yeah,
let's just assume that they probably do.
Yeah,
fair enough.
I mean, most of my ancestry is British, and yeah, they can go fuck themselves.
Most of my ancestry is alcoholics. Which I think is Scottish.
The big advantage of railroads over like just horse-drawn carriages was your options for roads at that point were dirt, gravel, or cobblestones. And so, steel rails were a lot smoother than that and a lot more efficient. So you could move bigger loads and the horses wouldn't be as tired. And, that for much of the 19th century, this was your best option, was to have horses pulling a tram, even in a city. Like I said, small steam boilers weren't really a thing back then. They tend to explode and people didn't really like that in the city. You did eventually get cable cars, especially like in places where the streets are very hilly and they're like a straight grid system, like in San Francisco, which is why they still have them there, and just for historical preservation reasons. And the idea with this is you had one engine, like usually at the top of the hill, and then you would have a cable that looped and the car has like basically a pair of pliers underneath it that grabs onto the cable, and that will act like a clutch and sort of move you along. And then you also have a brake, so it's like driving a car. You have a clutch and a brake, but no gas, and you're just moving at 9.5 miles an hour consistently. That's your maximum speed. And so these were also seen as more humane than horse-drawn trams, because the average lifespan of a horse used to pull a tram was about 2 years on the job.
Horrible.
Yeah.
Horrible.
And
I'm genuinely surprised that humanity played a role in this.
Yeah, I mean, this was sort of the beginning of the progressive era when they're like, we gotta like treat people like humans, except for if they're not white. But like, and there was the beginning of the animal welfare movement.
Wait, what time frame was this?
This was like late 1800s. So like,
I'm actually surprised they weren't like, hey, this keeps killing all the horses. Maybe we should have some like Irish or Chinese people do this.
Well, I don't have this in my notes, but I did come across in Australia they used convicts to pull trams for a while.
Fucking of course they did.
Yeah, so
you sucker in hell, you son of a bitch that owes the Queen 5 pence. What?
You stole a pair of socks. All right, you're gonna do hard labor for 20 years. But yeah, I mean, also just like the horse manure was piling up, and you needed stables and feed for them and everything.
Usually, when my problems are all horse shit, it's a lot less literal. So that.
Yeah. So I mean, they did eventually get miniature steam engines, but pretty quickly, electric electric trams were invented. So the first one was in 1875 in a town that I'm not going to try to pronounce, near St. Petersburg, by a guy named Fyodor Perotsky. And that was more of like a prototype. The first one in permanent service was in Germany, near Berlin, in Lichterfeld, in 1881. And this was built by Werner von Siemens. So like Siemens, they make a lot of trains today. And he was in contact with Perotsky in Russia. And so they sort of collaborated on this. And then at the beginning, they just had current going through the rails. And this, as you can imagine, was kind of dangerous. Like if you accidentally walk on both the rails at the same time, you're going to get fried. And then in 1883, they put in the first overhead wires. And the first overhead wire systems, they had a little cart that rode on the wires itself. And this was called a troller. And this is where the term trolley comes from. So it was called that because it looked like, I don't know, like dragging it behind with a fishing line. So like trolling. So
we do a little bit of trolling.
Kind of. Yeah. But this wasn't the greatest because they tended to fall off the wires. And then you had to like find some way to, put it back on there without getting electrocuted.
Let me guess. A lot of people got electrocuted trying to do that.
Yeah. Yeah. There's a few stories of like, if shit went wrong with the electricity, like it could just make the whole car electrified. And then like if you stepped off of it and kept your foot, like didn't jump, but like kept one foot on the tram, it would electrocute you. So like they had special procedures like that the driver was supposed to do to de-energize it and everything. But there's a few different people. A Belgian guy named Charles Van de Pola. I'm not sure how to pronounce that.
The secret to pronouncing names is not to say it right, but to say it confidently.
Yeah. And then there's an American named Frank J. Sprague or Sprague or something. And they together invented what was called the trolley pole. And this is basically a spring-loaded pole with a wheel on it that would ride on the wire. And then you have just the current go down to the rails or the ground.
I was hoping it was going to be more like a tractor pull.
No, POLE.
Oh,
Yeah. So, I mean, this had some advantages over the troller, but it wasn't perfect. It like required a pretty complex system on the wires. But Sprague was kind of a genius. He invented a whole lot of different things. He invented a way of coupling cars together and having them controlled by a single person, which made subway cars possible to have a whole train. And then so this was in 1888, and then and so these trolley poles are still sometimes used by what's called trolley buses, where you have basically an electric bus that draws power from the overhead wires, and those are a little bit cheaper to you don't have to lay rails in the street. You don't have like cars running over the rails and complaining about flat tires or whatever. And then but they've mostly been replaced by something called a bow collector, and then later the pantograph, which is what you see on basically every single electric train today, where it can move up and down. It's not just spring loaded, and you can connect or disconnect from the wires. And those use like carbon brushes, I think, to ride on the wires. So by the turn of the 20th century, basically any big city worth its salt had a streetcar network. Because back in those days, like cars were just a luxury for the rich, basically. So for your average person, your options were walk, ride a horse, take a horse-drawn taxi or bus, ride a bicycle, or shell out what amounts to millions of dollars for automobile, or take the streetcar. So lots and lots of people took the streetcars in cities. At its peak around 1917, the U.S. had 17,000 miles of streetcar lines. And even like L.A., which we think of as a huge car city, had 1,000 miles of streetcar tracks. And to give you another idea, like at its peak in 1910, Denver's streetcar ridership peaked at 88 million passengers.
Wow.
So, and that was in a much smaller city than it is today. And it's not a huge city either. And I'll have in the next part, I'll have a little bit more about sort of the public transit history of Denver specifically, because that's, I know a little bit more than that about that rather than other cities. There's also some about LA that I'll go into a little bit more. That's pretty well documented. So in this time period, in most places, the streetcar cost a nickel. And that was like kind of culturally ingrained that it cost a nickel. And they tried to play around with like, okay, it's only 3 cents downtown, but then if you're going out to the suburb, it's 8 cents or whatever. And people were like, no, we want the flat fee. We want it to be a nickel. And this led to problems later on when there was inflation, and people were like, no, it should be a nickel. Fuck you.
I actually
let's
think
bring
that's
that back.
Yeah, that's a great solution to inflation. Is just no, this costs this much, and that's what, like anti-market shit. It's just no, it costs this much. It cost that yesterday. Yeah. That's why it should cost that today. I like that mentality. Which, by the way, if that mentality held for everything in all markets, prices just wouldn't change ever. Inflation would cease to exist.
Right.
Which is interesting, but of course, we live in a stupid timeline where inflation does exist for some stupid-ass reason.
Well, they have to somehow magically have extra money for rich people to fucking accumulate.
Yep, they have to grow. So, anyway, sorry.
I'm going to do that next time at the grocery store, though. You'd be like, no, milk is $1. It is. Fuck off. Here's $1. Go fuck yourself. What are you going to do?
I mean, that does segue into what I was going to talk about next, which is a lot of people just really hated the owners of the streetcar lines because they were for-profit companies.
Sure.
And in a lot of cities, they would give monopolies to the streetcar companies. So it's kind of like cable or internet companies today, because it was a big infrastructure, layout.
It's
Hold
neoliberalism, but older, which is, I guess, proto-liberalism.
Yes.
Whoa, hold on. So now that I'm an ANCAP, I got to push back a little bit. Do you mean to say that because there's large initial investment and infrastructure involved in running a service, that you can't have a bunch of small businesses running these rail lines?
Well, I mean, that did happen in some cities, and they would like compete with each other and like tear up each other's rails and do shit like that.
I didn't even know that part. Jesus, unbelievable.
But like it like, capitalism trends towards monopolies. So like,
get out. What?
Usually the bigger one would buy out all the smaller
No.
ones.
See, because they know that would undermine the market forces, and they wouldn't do that. I've been assured that won't happen. So it must be something else. Oh, you know what? I bet the state got involved, right?
I mean, they did eventually.
There you go.
I'll talk about that.
Communism debunked. ANCAP is right.
This is my least favorite bit that anyone has ever done ever.
I will keep it going. I'm going to keep it doing. The more you complain, the more I'm going to do it.
I would expect nothing less. It's what I would do.
Let's see. So cities provided monopolies to streetcar companies, and in exchange, the companies paved and maintained the streets that they operated on. They would, pave it, sweep it, do snow removal, get all the dead horses out of the way. And they also promised not to raise fares, at least for a while. So
I mean, that's a good deal. I like it, sort of.
Yeah. And this made a few people very rich. They called them traction barons, because these are often called traction companies, electric traction or whatever. They operated their own little fiefdoms in each city. They usually sold electricity via the overhead lines.
Nice.
So they would, they had their own power plants to power the trams. And they're like, hey, if you're on the line, you can tap into the electricity, and we'll work out a deal here. And they often mistreated their workers. Big surprise.
You don't say.
So a lot of people did not like these companies and the owners. And from 1895 to 1929, there were streetcar company strikes in almost every major city in the U.S.
Well, if they weren't being treated well, why didn't they just go out and find a better job?
Brandon, that's my bit. God damn it!
All right, yeah, you both can't do it. That's too fucking much. I can't stay on the pod if there's two of you doing this shit. I can barely handle one.
See, maybe the problem was that nobody wanted to work back then.
See, no, that goes against the party line there. Because long time ago, people work hard. Nowadays, people no work hard.
Yeah, it's Gen Z and
you have
millennials
to stay
that are the
consistent.
problem. Yeah.
Yes, it's these young folks.
The
mean,
young
you
folks
joke,
today,
but there was
not before. The young folks in 1910 or whatever were hardworking.
They were in the coal mine since they were 4 years old. They were working hard.
They walked to school uphill both ways in the snow.
Okay,
that's right.
I don't know if I've shared this little tidbit, but it's one of my fun facts about this particular topic is the hatred of young people and how they don't do anything right and blah 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 goes back far enough to have been written about by Socrates.
Yes.
Yeah.
So let us always remember that no matter what time period we're discussing, at that time period no one wants to work, and it was a lot harder back when.
And I don't know if it was Socrates or one of the other ancient Greek philosophers, but he's like, this new invention called writing is making everyone soft. Back in my day, we would memorize these epic poems, and all these lily, people nowadays are writing them down and shit. That's cheating.
I like how the other part of that fun fact, Brandon, is that throughout history, apparently all older generations have literally forgotten all of that history. Every time you're like, no. These young people are different. This time is different.
It's a known phenomenon that World War I veterans accused young people of signing up for World War II just to get a free meal.
God.
Wow.
I've actually like read some like psychological musings on what causes it, and like people the closest explanation I've heard is that you hit a certain age and you just realize that like you're past your prime and you're being replaced by young people, and most people just sort of lean into like bitterness and shitty attitudes about that.
Huh.
Sounds about right.
Yikes.
Joke's on them. I'm shitty and bitter already. I didn't need to get on it.
I just avoid it by like as I close in on 40. Whenever I see like a 20-year-old doing something that I wildly don't understand, I'm just like, all right, as long as you're happy.
That's a good way to be.
Yeah, they're all going to get the anime eyes surgery and be cooler than us.
You know, if that's a real thing, then whatever, dude. I have a split tongue. Like, I can't judge somebody for being fucking weird. Like,
it was some webcomic. It was like this guy trying to be cool, and then they're like, "You don't even have the anime eyes surgery. How can you be cool?"
oh well.
And he's like, "Oh, damn."
I mean, my point remains. I like legitimately do have my tongue split, so like, I wasn't joking.
Fuck, where was I?
I don't know, we went off the rails. Zane.
Yeah,
Damn, I was hoping I was gonna make that pun, but wasn't quick enough.
All right.
That's because even pretending to be an ANCAP makes your brain work worse. All you have to do is joke about it.
I just thought maybe you were
not
looking at
even-
pictures of elementary schools.
ANCAP, not even once.
It's philosophical meth. It's just going to destroy your brain.
That's a good way to describe it. Okay, so streetcar strikes. There were often, like big old battles and riots and stuff that lasted weeks. And the owner's tactic was to simply keep the routes running. To counter hostile crowds, the line owners turned to strike breakers.
Of course.
Foremost among them was James A. Farley, who specialized in streetcar strikes. He claimed to have broken up to 50.
The guy bragged about it? Oh my god. Why was this guy left alive? I don't... Oh, man.
Yeah, he died in 1913, so at, what would that be? Like 38?
I think my position...
39?
I think my position on this show is always going to be that unions need to be far more violent.
Yes. I'll co-sign that.
I hope we're about to learn that he died at the age of like 39, having mysteriously beaten himself to death, climbed into a burlap sack, and thrown himself off a bridge.
That's not in my notes, but I can look it up here in a minute. But he was said to command an army of 40,000 scabs to be deployed anywhere in the country. So yeah, real piece of shit.
Who are these goddamn... Sorry, who are these scabs? Who the fuck is in this scab army? I don't get it. Why would anyone do this?
And then much of the Sorry, go ahead.
I was just going to say a serious thing, but as a joke, it was all the people who were pissed off that no one wants to work anymore.
Yeah.
People whose favorite flavor is boot.
Was going to say, oh yeah, so much of the violence of the 1907 San Francisco strike was attributed to Farley, who reportedly cleared $100 million there. So he was getting rich off of this.
Wait, is that adjusted?
No. So this is in time period. So he was doing more than $10 million in business in 1914.
What?
And that 1907 strike in San Francisco saw 30 people killed and 1,000 injured.
Yikes.
Oh, and it looks like he died of tuberculosis. So, sorry.
That's a failing. See? It should have been a more gruesome death.
Tuberculosis stealing union jobs of beating strike breakers to death.
But yeah, so I mean, things kind of calmed down like in the 30s after the 1929 New Orleans strike. But you did have, plenty of labor militancy. There was a big strike in Atlanta in 1950. So my favorite example of this was the St. Louis streetcar strike of 1900. Up until then, there had been 10 different independent streetcar companies operating in St. Louis. So this is that healthy competition.
Yeah, the kind that's good and
but
totally works. I'm guessing you're gonna continue to say how it all worked out, right?
Yeah, well, in 1899, they were consolidated into two different companies.
Well, no, but the market wouldn't want that to happen, so that didn't happen.
Yeah, so the St. Louis and Suburban Railway and the St. Louis Transit Company, headed by Edwards Whitaker, not Edward Edwards. That's interesting. So in 1900, under pressure of long hours, low pay, and poor working conditions, the employees of both companies attempted to unionize as Local 131. So Whitaker, the president of one, fired his 3,300 workers right away.
What the fuck?
And
what? How? All of them?
Yeah,
3,300.
Yeah.
I mean,
and he got 1,000 cops to replace them.
Oh my God.
So, yeah, this is pretty familiar territory for strikes. So on the first day of the strike, May 9th, the St. Louis Republic reported a full page of riot conditions across the entire city. Multiple bystanders shot, an attempted lynching, a crowded streetcar being stoned by a mob sympathetic to the strikers, and policemen assaulted with thrown bricks and bottles.
So it sounds like Colorado has a long history of getting stoned.
No, this is St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh, right. Well, my joke doesn't work as well then.
So strikers sought to disrupt service by cutting cables, lighting bonfires, piling boulders, rubble, and other obstacles onto the tracks.
Fantastic. Amazing praxis. I love it.
Man, I wish I could go back in time and teach them about a little thing called Sherman's bow tie.
Ooh, I don't get this reference. What is Sherman's bow tie?
Oh, well, we'll be quick. This is wildly unrelated. General Sherman during the Civil War, the Sherman's March to the Sea. He would when he would march through and destroy he didn't just win battles, he destroyed infrastructure. And the thing that his men were known for doing is they would rip up railroads and take the railroad, the actual rail itself, and heat it up until it could be bent, and they would wrap it around trees so that they were not only just destroying the track, but they were making it so that it had to be completely replaced and not just put back where it belongs.
Yeah, you couldn't just weld it together. You had to.
Yeah, once it was torn up, it was destroyed. And so when they would heat it up and wrap it around trees, that was called a Sherman's bow tie.
I love it. Sweet.
There's one of those Facebook groups that's anytime anyone's getting a little bit too Confederate, it's called Sherman did nothing wrong. Which I mean is objectively not true. I mean, he was a real asshole to Native Americans, but
dude, I grew up in Georgia, so Sherman was talked about like the 1860s Osama bin Laden. I vaguely remember in school learning that he was a terrorist.
Yeah, but for the good guys.
I'm guessing they didn't even dare to mention the name John Brown.
I genuinely feel like he got a blurb in one textbook in one grade.
Yeah,
dude, no joke.
Right.
And I'm embarrassed to admit this, but it's the state of education. I thought the South won the Civil War until I was 12 years old.
Wow. No,
That's
I've literally heard that the
honestly.
Civil War is taught absolutely, totally differently in the South than it is in the North. I've heard that
it's genuinely embarrassing, but I can't help how I was raised, where I grew up, etc. And yeah, it was just sort of one of those things where you really the South, the Confederacy got high praise. The Union were the monsters who came in and disrupted our way of life. And, something happened after that. We don't discuss it.
I don't know how to square this exactly. And I know this is off the rails, but I never know how to
You got it in there.
Yeah, I did. I don't know how to square this. Again, I have this more anarchist kind of tendency, but I believe heavily in like centralization in as a concept, like standardization. Like if something is true, it shouldn't be true in one region and not another, right? Truth is fucking truth. And like when you come to the Civil War, how it's taught, I'm just like, I don't know. I feel like maybe there should be a national or federal kind of just like, yeah, this is how that curriculum needs to be taught, because clearly in the South they're teaching it very differently in a way that is super problematic. And so, in the post-revolution world, I kind of wonder. I'm just like, yeah, a little standardization is good. Not everything should be just like, oh yeah, let the local whatever decide. It's like, well, no. No, there's got to be some kind of general. I don't know how to describe it, but shit should be uniform. Truth is generally true everywhere. So anyway, I don't know. I just wanted to work that in, but yeah, very weird.
Yeah, I was embarrassingly old before I fully accepted like how incredibly wrong my whole view of that period of history was. Like,
I mean, I can't talk. I was genuinely a conservative until I was technically an adult. So,
Same.
So, yeah. I feel like learning how wrong you are is sometimes a better way to come to truth than like just having been right for a long time. I feel like when you realize how wrong you were, it's humbling in a way that is necessary.
well, when I see somebody that has genuinely good intentions but incredibly bad like opinions and beliefs, but you can tell that they're trying, it just takes me back to what I was like
Yeah.
probably 12 to 15 years ago, and I'm like, okay, you might be heading in the right direction. I'm going to give you enough rope to hang yourself.
Yeah.
And maybe you'll do something constructive with it. But I see where I've come from and where I'm at, and I'm like, no, there's a lot of room for people to move left.
Yeah.
And
I
learn
agree.
and accept that they were wrong at one point and grow from that. Because God knows I fucking had to do it.
Yeah.
I have those anxiety driven, like staying awake at night moments where I'm like, oh God, that conversation that I really doubled down on was so fucking embarrassing in retrospect.
Yeah.
But,
And like, I'm kind of just getting to the point in like reading theory and stuff where it's like, before I was like, I know you're wrong, but I don't know why, or I don't know how to articulate it. And now, at least to some degree, I'm like, okay, I know why you're wrong, and I can tell you why. And I hope I'm not being an insufferable asshole doing that, but I'm sure I am sometimes.
I just try to admit that sometimes I don't know.
Yeah, that's
definitely.
a huge
I mean,
thing.
that's a huge
thing. That's skepticism right there. Like, just like when you don't know, you say, I don't know. But also point out when other people don't know either. Like, I don't know, but you don't have an answer either unless you have some good fucking evidence. And usually they don't. But I think that's a good, humbling kind of thing, is they're like, hey, if you don't know, just like know what you don't know, which is why we're generally on this episode not taking hard positions on Ukraine, Russia, whatever. Just too much going on. Just not in the purview of Cars and Comrades.
But yeah, so St. Louis, 1900, the people in working class neighborhoods, there was a lot of union membership in St. Louis. So they would strike down or, put barricades up on the lines and, shut down the trolley in their neighborhood. So like it was a big strike, and, there were pretty hard lines drawn between the cops and the strikers. And the scabs also, like at several points, the strikers tried to dynamite the dormitories for the scabs.
Nice.
I was hoping you were going to say they tried to dynamite the police, and I was like, yes.
Well, and they succeeded in dynamiting several of the streetcars while they were parked overnight.
I love it. I love it. This is great. Fantastic.
Yeah, this is back in the day, those great ANCAP days where you could just go in and buy a stick of dynamite from the hardware store.
That's the
and
market, baby.
The
That's
government,
the market.
the government to get involved.
By the way, so
I mean, unironically, we should bring that part back.
I'm an ANCAP,
That's dope as
but I
fuck.
believe the market works in two directions, and if people have fucking dynamite, that's the market working right there. When strikes happen, that's the market, in my weird ANCAP opinion now. So strikes are the market, and that's how it works. Although, find me an ANCAP that can explain how unions work, and that's not the market. I'd love to hear it.
I mean, ANCAPs just think everything is the market, right? Like, existence is the
workers
market.
Collectively bargaining, that's the market to me. I don't see why they got a problem with that.
Yeah,
I'm all for the market, man.
I mean, evolution is just the marketplace of like cellular ideas or something. Like everything is just a marketplace
of ideas. And my idea is that unions are awesome and should probably be more aggressive.
Like, I'm trying to not buy into the character that you're doing because
it probably won't make it past this one episode, although this might be a 2-part episode, so it might be back.
Well,
who knows?
I just mean this from the perspective of, like, at the very least, Bryant's got to go soon, so, like, I'm trying to not derail this wildly by arguing against points that I know you don't even believe.
Yeah, I mean, I'm mostly done with this, but I've got a couple more things here. But I think this is kind of interesting. Whitaker, the owner of the one of the lines, his own attorney was like, hold up, this is a little crazy. Like, what are you guys doing? So he wrote to a local labor commissioner and said, on Wednesday last, a transit car without a light about it was loaded with armed men, and while the car was running at a rapid speed by the corner of Mississippi and Park Avenues, the men in the car, absolutely without a shadow of provocation, fired into a hall, like maybe a union hall, 100 feet away, in which a few striking employees were assembled. And several people on the streets were wounded, and the lives of many were endangered. Last Thursday night, a similar unprovoked outrage was committed at the corner of Compton and Park Avenues, where several citizens, some not connected with the strike, were seriously wounded. Other outrages of this nature could be cited, which were committed by ruffians armed by the company and loaded on its cars scattered throughout the city. So he's not saying like, oh, the cops and the strike breakers are killing people. He's like, some unknown people on a streetcar were shooting into a crowd and some people got hurt. So the police board swore in 2,500 citizens in a posse comitatus commanded by a local realty agent.
What?
Oh my god! Of course. It's always real estate.
And this same guy, John H. Cavender, had played a similar role in the bloody 1877 St. Louis general strike. So on the evening of June 10th, 1900, men from that posse fatally shot 3 strikers returning from a picnic, leaving 14 others wounded.
Okay, new idea for the revolution. We all pretend to love cops enough until we get sworn in to be their fucking deputies or whatever, and then we take over. That's the revolution right there. Haha! Now we're the cops, and we're gonna get rid of all the cops. I don't know.
If you have enough people on your side that you can flood the police force, you also just have enough people on your side that you can collectively decide to the police.
True. Okay, that's a good point. I like that. Moving on. Sorry.
Yeah. So, and then on July 2nd, Whitaker signed an agreement to take back the workers and let them unionize. But then he reneged on the deal.
Bastard.
So the strike sputtered out in September with no advantage to the workers. And the only real accomplishment was that there was a few sort of like liberal reformers that gained prominence out of this. There's a young lawyer named Joseph W. Folk who represented the striking workers, and he was soon working as the city prosecutor, and he was pursuing a corruption charge against the Democratic boss, Edward Butler. And then in 1904, he became the governor of Missouri. So, I mean, he rose to prominence and did a few good things, but I don't know. So there's also the election of Mayor Rolla Wells. on a reform platform, and an expose of St. Louis corruption by Lincoln Steffens, who I think was a newspaper reporter. So Whitaker basically had no consequences from this. He was, rich up until he died, and in 1910 he became president of the Boatman's Bank.
Sure, okay, yeah. This guy has the experience to run a bank too. Why not? Fuck it, who cares? I hate.
It's because he has money and banks have
okay.
money. Duh.
Yeah, that's true.
That's how it works. Obviously, he's very qualified. All you need is to have money to do anything in business, because businesses deal with money.
If you have money, that's
obviously
true.
you're good at any business.
If you have the money, you're good at business.
Yeah, it's an indication of virtue. Duh.
Yes.
I hate that you're obviously saying it sarcastic, but that's also how things actually get handled.
Well, the market has decided that person should be successful.
If the market does one more fucking thing in this episode, I'm going to lose it.
Yeah. Connor, show us on the doll where the invisible hand of the market touched you.
The way I see it, everything that happens is a result of the market, right? So all these horrible monopolies and worker abuses are somehow, I guess they're the market. But the market's good. Just, it's when the state gets involved that it's bad. Then that's when the market does bad things, which is why it's done all these bad things throughout history. It's the government. The market's great.
You know why I'm a communist? Because I used an analytical framework and some historical research, and I realized that communism has been the one large-scale system that has uplifted people involved. It made mistakes, sure, but that's praxis is learning from your mistakes. And the interesting thing I think about libertarians, and by extension ANCAPs and equally neoliberals, is that it's entirely theoretical, based on very little, and the only real life tangible examples that they could really try and use went catastrophically wrong.
Well, it just hasn't been tried properly yet.
Yeah.
I'm committed to this character now. I'm an ANCAP on this podcast.
Yeah, capitalism works great on paper, but real capitalism hasn't been. I can't even.
I quit.
So anyway, basically, Brian, we're leaving us in a situation where the streetcar industry was like its own industry that kind of grew out of the rail industry. It's just like rail for cities, and it was early public transportation. And so I assume the next episode is going to be how car manufacturers had a certain interest in undoing that for their benefit.
That's definitely part of it. Like, it was a conscious effort by all these car companies to sell, a car to every American, or at least a bus to the bus lines. And of course, there was an actual conspiracy with General Motors, Standard Oil, and I think Firestone Tires to promote buses over trolleys. But it was also, a large part of it was just market forces. It was, it was just capitalism screwing up something that was good. And it was a very, complex thing. You can't just say this one guy, Sloan or whoever, conspired in a smoke-lit room, or smoke-filled room, excuse me. That doesn't make sense. To destroy the trolley system because he was evil. It was a lot of different people acting selfishly in the market to, create the world that we live in, where cars are prominent. So, yeah. And I do have one more quick thing about the St. Louis streetcar strike. Samuel Gompers of the AFL called it the fiercest struggle ever waged by the organized toilers up to that point. And eventually it did have 14 dead and around 200 wounded.
Jesus.
Which was more than the Pullman strike of 1894.
Yeah. Wow. God damn.
It's so wild that the market would open fire on them like that.
and maybe I'll have a little bit more of this on next episode, but the San Francisco strike of 1907 saw 30 people killed and 1,000 injured.
Holy shit.
So,
wow.
This was, like I said, the height of labor militancy in the U.S. was around this time period, around 1900 to, or maybe 1895 to 1930 or so.
Yeah.
That was when, a lot of people, especially communists and anarchists, were like, we're done taking this shit from you capitalists. We're gonna, dynamite your shit and take back some power.
Notably, before Walter Reuther's time. Interestingly enough, I wonder.
Yeah,
I wonder if those things are related.
Yeah. So yeah, next up, I've also got. I mean, we'll do this on the next episode, but I've got like the early version of Uber that came around when cars were a first a thing, and then, like I said, the GM streetcar strike. I'll probably the GM streetcar conspiracy, and we'll probably go into detail a little bit more about how Alfred P. Sloan was a real piece of shit, and even through like the 1950s was destroying public transit, and he was instrumental in the building of the interstate highway system.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
Eisenhower administration.
Great.
So, yeah. And then maybe we'll have a little bit more about modern light rail and how it's kind of come back since then. But that's all I've got for now. Anything else before we close it out, guys?
I would like to formally object to the character that Connor keeps doing.
Yeah, I'm not too jazzed on it myself.
I understand the role that it's playing, but it forces me to sidetrack myself every 6 or 7 minutes.
What?
Like, well, I got to spend 10 minutes arguing this point that you don't even believe.
Oh, man. Yeah, look, I'm sorry. I see it in real life, and it just horrifies me, and I need to make a joke out of it. Because people really believe this shit. Yeah, this is me lashing out to a fucking horror that I see in the real world. Way too much.
ANCAPs are just the market version of Christians.
Look, I'm gonna. Here's a hot take. Yeah. I think that they're actually somewhat ideologically consistent, more so than liberals and conservatives. At least they fucking admit they're like, well, yeah, that bad thing is just that's the market. I'm like, all right, well, at least you're consistent. But they treat capitalism is a religion, and they're just the fundamentalists. And like any religion, the fundamentalists believe it the most. They are the most consistent. They're like, yeah, these people should be stoned. Look, it's in the book. They don't come up with bullshit rationalizations like, oh, well, it's a metaphor. Oh, no. When God said you could own slaves, he didn't mean slaves. It was servants. He just was bad with words. The creator of the universe, he's bad with his words. The fundamentalists, at least, are like, it's in the book. I don't know. That's the market. That's how it works. I don't know. It sucks.
I don't know if consistency is something to be praised when the only thing that you're being consistent about is being wrong.
I mean, yeah, that's fair. But I don't know.
That's like being in school and saying like, well, I mean, I was consistent. And that's why I got a 0 because I was wrong about everything. Unlike these wishy-washy people who got a 60 because they were at least right once in a while.
Yeah, I mean, I think
they say getting a 0% on a test is just as hard as getting 100%. So they know all the right answers and they just intentionally avoid giving them. So there's something there, I guess. I don't know.
I think, I mean, whatever your philosophy is or religion or whatever, like you should at least be open to different ideas and be able to consider them and, maybe reject them or maybe say, okay, maybe
Unless
there's
you're a
some truth in
communist
that.
or anarchist, in which case, that's it. You've reached the end. You've got the right answer. No more looking. That's it. It's done.
I would say between every 3 and 6 months, I have a crisis of faith about my own beliefs.
No, that's fair.
And I question everything, and I start reading again, and like, just because just the world just wants to beat you down. Like, everyone is so certain that you're wrong. It's hard to like have absolute faith and certainty. So I do like routinely question myself. And you know what? I usually end up back at the same place I started, or extremely more radical.
I mean,
And your positions are stronger for it, frankly.
Yeah, I'm not embarrassed that I occasionally question myself.
yeah,
Like-
that's a thing to be proud of. Wear that like a badge of honor. Yeah.
You should be embarrassed if you don't. Like, if you never question your own positions or beliefs,
Yeah.
that
If you're listening to this podcast and that sounds like it might be you, it's okay. Don't worry. For real. I'm being genuine. But question it. Now is the time. Hey.
yeah. Sorry to call you a piece of shit, but no, you should. Like, for real, you should.
Yeah.
Should question.
Yeah,
yourself
I
a
question
little
everything. My beliefs, like the role of religion, whether I should get out of bed that day.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
That'll give you something to think about, listeners. And I think we got to get going here.
Yeah.
So we'll be back next time with more about Streetcars.
Check us out on social media and all that
Oh
good
yeah,
stuff.
yeah. We're on Instagram, Twitter, Reddit, Facebook, Hexbear, which is the old Chapo chat.
Yep.
Yeah, so come check us out. Go ahead and rate us on your various podcast apps. You know, whatever, 5 stars or whatever it is. I don't know, thumbs up, whatever you got. Give us a rating, give us a follow. Come hang out with us on social media. I am addicted to social media, so you'll find me there a lot of the time.
Yeah, same. But what was I going to say? I don't know. It left my head, so we'll pick that up, I guess, next time.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Yeah.
Bye. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Would it surprise you guys to find out the only ANCAP I know in real life is also a Christian?
No.
I can beat that. The only like hardcore libertarian, possibly ANCAP guy that I knew in real life was a convicted pedophile.
Oh my god!
My calculations are correct. When this baby hits 88 miles per hour, you're gonna see some serious shit.
When left entirely on its own devices, capitalism foists its diseconomies and its toxicity upon the general public and upon the natural environment. And then it does an interesting thing. It eventually begins to devour itself. If the paladins of corporate America want to know what really threatens our way of life, it's their way of life.
It don't matter if you win by an inch or a mile. Winning's winning.
It's important that we examine the twin forces behind the Biden candidacy, the billionaires and the Bolsheviks.